when it comes time for you to speak, if you want, you can take your mask off and speak into the microphone. If you notice, that's how the governor's been doing it. Tonight, as soon as we start the meeting, I'll take mine off. So. Just so you can hear me. Ready, Scott? All right, so if you want to call the meeting to order.
Oh, this is a regular meeting. Okay. I'm going to call the special meeting of the Yellowmeadow City School Board for work session for August 4th, 2020 to order. First item is we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Schneider has the flag out for us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is roll call of board members. Sharon Rupp, present.
Sonia Peterson.
Jeremy LeBlanc.
Amanda Lacey.
Ron Winter.
Okay, and Jeremy Corner said he would be a little late, but he intends to be here. So I'll bring up my presentation here for you folks. Just as a reminder, there'll be no official action here tonight. This is just based upon discussion. So if you folks have questions, please stop, ask me questions. I might have to do some investigation. I do have all of the documents, or the majority of the documents here we can look up and try and find your answers. Basically, I've asked you here as representatives from each of the different groups. So along with the board members, I do have our person representing health and safety, and that would be Cassie, our school nurse. Buildings and grounds, also we have Francis here to help with us. We have representatives from each of our bargaining units here, EMYME and MSEA. So we have Robin Esleeson and Julie Butterbrodt, and from the MSEA we have Nicole Kotek and Crystal Enninge. All right? So if you have questions, we really need to talk this out. If it's something that makes you nervous or you're hearing in the community, now is the time for us to figure it out before Monday night. The further we get along tonight in trying to resolve some of this, the better off we're going to be Monday. All right? I realize Lakeview did release their plan today. We're not ready for that yet. We still have some hiccups in our system. We're still working with our staff. We're just trying to work through it as quickly and as safely as possible. So I basically took this out of what I presented in the Zoom I had with the community staff and students here about a week and a half ago. And these are our 3 areas of commitment. And in that order, safety has to be our priority, the safety of our students and our staff. We have to take that into consideration in all of our decisions. No matter what decision we make, it's not going to be perfect for everyone. We have to have a level of tolerance of what we can accept in terms of working together. We aren't going to meet everyone's needs. It's not possible. Flexibility. We were told that we need to be able to move between models. And so this represents that. We do have limiting factors. We have limited staff. We have limited financial resources. So we're going to take that into consideration. We also considered what our parents could tolerate in terms of what their capacity is for, say, full-time distance learning or those things, and what was best for our students in those situations. And then we talked about, there are 3 different models. I think everybody's heard them all, but in-person, hybrid, and then distance learning. So the governor's plan, so basically what his plan is that local control model with some regulations. So we're going to work together with our county health officials in sharing and monitoring data. I will have my first meeting with the Minnesota Department of Health and the Countryside Public Health tomorrow morning at 8:30. We have a 2-hour meeting scheduled with all of the area superintendents, so all of us are going to get the same information. The model will depend upon the number of COVID cases per 10,000 county residents. So if you look at Yellow Medicine County, which has the majority of our students in it, there is less than 10,000 students in population in Yellow Medicine County. Chippewa County is a bigger county, but less of our students come from that area. We have the ability to do in-person, it will vary from county to county. So we might be doing one thing, Lyon County might do another thing. If we look at Lakeview's situation, the reason they could make their decision today is because their caseload or their number here, last I checked on there, was 25. That puts both of them in hybrid. Their building capacity allows them to bring every student in while providing some of the areas of precautionary tactics, I guess. So each of those levels, once we establish a baseline, then we can kind of say that that's where we're at unless we dramatically change. And we would get consultation from the Department of Health and Public Health also in changing that. The goal is to reduce the local spread. One thing about this model, the intent is that we can locally impact this, all right? But I'm going to preach here for a second. I go to Casey's and I'm disappointed. All right, folks, we have to make sacrifices to provide opportunities for our students. If wearing a mask is a sacrifice, personally, I'm willing to make that sacrifice because I know the impact we can have in person with our students. All schools must offer some form of distance learning, so parents can elect into distance learning. Remember, roughly 66%. Denise went through all of our current enrollment and determined, Denise, with the help of the Crystal and Nicole, went through and determined about 66% of our students reside in Yellow Medicine County. The second most populous county is Chippewa at 21.4%. Renville is next at 11.65%. Redwood is down there, 2 students in Redwood, 2 students in Candy, Ojai, 1 in Lacaparle, and 1 in Lyon. It's likely the Lyon one is an open enrollee, and I'm pretty sure the Candy, Ojai is too. So, questions about this? So I want to pause. This might bring up questions. Maybe you're jotting them down and want to talk later. Yes?
So, if Lyon County has, a spike in their cases, even though we only have 1 student from Lyon, do we have to go?
Okay, my proposal to the Department of Health for my baseline will not include Lyon County.
Okay.
Simply due to that 1 student. Does that help? Okay. So the survey results about distance learning showed that 55% of the respondents, this was the first survey that came out, thought instruction was good or excellent. Only 9% of those people thought distance learning last spring was poor. Now remember, I administered this survey in early June. So 18% said too much work was assigned, so just some anecdotal information here. 67% said they received adequate communication and feedback from all or most teachers, and 74% said they received adequate communication overall. So we did a survey on reentry. We surveyed both the staff and the students, or the parents, and this is from the parents portion, quality education. Parents indicated less confidence in distance and hybrid than in person. I think that we can say that that's true, that most of us believe in that, we can do a better job educating students in person. Roughly 20.8% indicated they had a problem with child care if we were to go to distance learning. That doesn't mean they qualify for child care. Child care is Tier 1 employees. 53.2% said they were concerned or extremely concerned about falling behind academically from the distance learning they received last spring. This doesn't mean, and I didn't take it from the survey, that that's a knock on our teaching staff. It's just that idea that we believe in-person education is the highest quality of education. 69.8% concerned or extremely concerned about falling behind academically this year if we were to go to distance learning. So in other words, they could tolerate it for a shorter period of time, but they would be even more concerned for a longer period of time. And 44.6% were concerned or extremely concerned about the child's well-being as a result of distance learning. We're talking about the social and emotional health of their child. Questions about that? Results, and I can share these out, and if you want other information from this, I can try and glean it out now, but I have all three surveys data here.
Rich, are you able to send this to us through an email?
Yeah,
At all?
I can get this exact information to you.
Perfect.
All right, Denise, you want to put that on to do? Thank you. So our focus is to get as much in-person and hybrid instruction as possible. We are supposed to get real-time data by 4 o'clock on Thursday. I'm hoping tomorrow I'm going to get daily data. That will be what I push them for. I don't know if they're going to give me a dashboard that provides that. I also want more information about the demographics of the people that are testing positive. There's just a whole host more information that I believe I should use in making that decision. Don't get me wrong, I'm saying that's not just me. I'm not going to make this decision in isolation. There will be a regional support team assigned to me that will include a representative from the Department of Health, our public health, and the regional public health, and it will be run through Southwest West Central. So Countryside will be a part of that, but they won't be the only one helping us. In theory, we can adjust, once we establish this baseline and get it approved through the Department of Education, we can adjust either way. If the district chooses a less restrictive model than indicated by a number, in other words, if our number says we should be distance learning and we want to keep hybrid, we have to appeal it with data from the Department of Health. If we want a more restrictive one, say we're in hybrid and we want to go to distance learning, we must notify the MDE commissioner. That is through a learning model portal. We're told that that will be watched and we'll receive input on that also. We will, hopefully Monday night, have an idea of what our baseline model will be. But understand, we will make a recommendation in the next couple weeks after that, based upon our data that's happening live. But based upon our discussions tonight, our hope is that At worst, we would be in a hybrid model.
Rich, when you say the MDH data, what exactly are you looking for in the data? What kind of things are they supplying to you?
So they'll supply the number of positive cases in the last 2 weeks. We know that for sure. All right. I'm hoping they will supply demographics data. Okay, so we have, when I say demographics, I look at congregate living facilities. Okay, so if we have an outbreak in a congregate living facility over in Canby, that might not impact what model we should be in.
Sure.
All right, so I want to know our data, because just a change of 5 students or even 1 student can dramatically change us, because we're less than 10,000
Right.
people in.
And as far as like the age group affected too, will they be providing, is that?
That's what I'm
data
asking
provided
for,
as well?
because I know right now on the MDH
Right.
dashboard that's provided. Now, I've heard CDC, I know, I talked to a daycare provider today, and she said that she was receiving CDC data that included more information than what's on the MDH, because she was talking about the number of positive cases here in the last 5 days, and that is not what the Department of Health had on their data that I've been watching. I get it every day. I'm sure you guys.
Yeah, the situation update every day.
Yeah, it's really, it's not private data. You can sign up for it and get it too. So I just try and keep an eye on it. Great questions. So sanitation. So Francis is here. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock we have training on sanitation, proper sanitation as it relates to COVID and some of the other things that we will need to implement based upon, we are switching from, what was the name of our guy that did our mercury, and
Steve Musser.
we're switching from Musser Environmental onto IEA Environmental out of Southwest West Central. So they are going to come and do our training. From that information, we'll be able to glean out information that we should share with all of our staff, including our teachers, paraprofessionals, custodians, and food service. We know that we're going to have to set up an iteration for cleaning. Right now in my document, I have us cleaning frequently, the custodians cleaning frequently touched surfaces 3 times a day. So what Francis and I talked about yesterday is after the first wave of students come in, we will go through, a custodian will go through and wipe down all door handles, railings, light switches. I have a list of things. It's in our formal plan. So, and then we're going to ask for the teachers' help. For example, in the high school, we're going to have so much transition that we can't get teachers or paraprofessionals. We can't get a custodian in there in between every cohort. So we'll ask the teachers, teach them how to use it and how to clean appropriately to try and minimize the transmission. Sanitizer, as you can see, we have a portable sanitizer station right there. We have a bunch of them ordered. Francis right now is in the midst of waxing and stuff like that, so he'll get those put up before school starts. So we'll have those. One thing that will be unique is one of the fears of parents is going out onto the playground and using the playground equipment and what that will look like for the student. Well, twofold. We have to teach students not to touch a surface and touch their face or anything like that. So we have some education to do there. But as soon as they're coming in, there will be a sanitizer station for our elementary students as they come in. So we're going to have to obviously, and we'll talk about that when we talk the nurse and hygiene, do some education on frequent hand washing. Common areas, again, we look at not just our classroom door handles, but we look at other areas such as railings, bathrooms. Those things are going to have to be cleaned 3 times a day. and disinfected. Water fountains will have limited access. We're going to close off, to the best of our ability, close off the regular water function of the fountains and use water bottles. So we have a bunch of those throughout our building. So we'll ask that students bring in a water bottle, and so that should minimize the common touching. Questions about sanitation? Questions that parents are going to ask? Teachers, things that you guys or you folks are.
When you talk about the after each cohort, do you mean each class period, or do you mean
Yeah.
grade level?
Yep. So it will be a class period. So like 6 times a day you'll be asked, and you'll be able to open your windows, increase the ventilation in there. I know some people, we're going to try and use as low a dilution as possible for cleaning, but it does have to have, it's not going to be bleach every period, because, and here's a great example. Lakeview has done some great things, but we do not have to sanitize after each group of students. It's not possible for us to do that. We have to clean after each group of students. And that's 2 different things.
When we talk about use of playground equipment, too, they'll wash before they go out on the playground too, which is another measure of control that, like, as they've been touching things, they'll wash before they go out, which then is a little bit less contact, and then they'll wash when they come back in too.
Yeah, and actually those hand sanitizers, that's not as good as you washing your hands. So, washing your hands for 20 seconds, say the ABC song, I believe is what they teach, right?
So what do you mean by the difference between cleaning and sanitizing?
Okay, for something to be sanitized, you have to approach what's called dwell time for a cleaner, all right? The very, very expensive stuff that we probably can't even get our hands on is 3 minutes. It has to remain wet for 3 minutes. We do that in our lunchroom. We do that now. We will do that for this also. That would be like a bleach solution. Cleaning is taking, so I've learned a lot about this, done a lot of research. It's called bioloading. All right, so things tend to dwell or hang on to things that have a lot of bioloading. Bioloading is like the grease off of your hands, the skin stuff. That results in bioloading. If you've ever gone, I'll give you a great example. Take a wet one and wipe your steering wheel. That's bioloading. All right, the virus tends to stay longer where there's bioloading. It's hidden in there. It's embedded. So cleaning will allow us an opportunity to remove that, and so when we do sanitize, it's effective.
Can I add to that just a little bit? So some of our solutions that say we use at home, like our Clorox solution, or I've got different types of cleaners that I use in my office, in order for it to be bactericidal, which would kill a virus, it could have to sit for, say, 10 minutes. For it to kill certain types of bacteria, it might only have to sit for 6 minutes. So it's more kind of semantics to say, like, we can't guarantee that we're sanitizing that surface against COVID, but we're eliminating that bioloading by cleaning it, which can be done with a lot of different products.
Yeah, and so we have to look on there, so when we look at it, it might have a dwell time for bacteria of 3 minutes, but for SARS-CoV-19, CoV-2 I guess it's called, that might be 10 minutes. The most common cleaner we use around here, which is called 19, is a 10-minute dwell time. And so, we can't transition students in between there with a 10-minute dwell time.
So what does cleaning in the classroom between cohorts, what do you envision that to be?
That would be a spray bottle of diluted 19, all right, and paper towels.
Like wiping down the desks and on doorknobs?
Correct.
Or, okay.
Desks, doorknobs, anything, we know the desktops, any hand grips, but then it's kind of up to the individual teacher if they're, this gives them a little flexibility too. So if you're concerned about things, you can hit those extra areas yourself by giving you that cleaner. But we'll have minimum standards of those areas I talked about.
And as far as the MDH standards go, our high-touch surfaces have to be sanitized once a day. That's the minimum requirement of sanitation, disinfecting. The cleaning is where it comes into frequent, where we as a district define what our schedule will be, or is kind of what it is. But as far as the MDH standard, the disinfectant requirement is once per day.
So you folks, you guys understand that? I mean,
I have a couple more questions for you.
Yep.
Okay, so, there's gonna be a follow-up to this question. So is this done for both hybrid learning situations and in-person classes?
correct. We are going to, okay, so we're going to take a sanitization plan that basically meets the higher standard of hybrid for in-person. That way we don't have to, there'll be very little difference between an in-person model and a hybrid model. That way we don't have to reteach, because I also don't want to fail because it took us a while to ramp up to the standard.
Okay, so then Mr. Left, I think this next question might be for you. If we're in person, is the plan still to have some of those middle school teachers out of their classrooms?
You talking hybrid or scenario one?
Scenario one.
Scenario one, we will still, everyone will be in the classrooms.
Okay, so then hybrid.
Hybrid,
would I-
we would move to our 5 larger locations to get our middle school in.
Okay, so then going back to that, some of those locations don't have windows, like I know the choir room and the band room were thrown out there, library can't open the windows.
Correct.
So that's just something to keep in mind because
Okay.
parents might want to know that their kids can't really.
Okay.
If you're in those classes multiple times.
I wonder if we increase the ventilation in those rooms with a fan, maybe crack the door on, I know the music rooms, we can crack the door on.
Let's not make that promise yet because there isn't any scientific evidence to support the ban yet.
Okay.
And
Well, no, I don't
we've
think
been
she's
about
talking
that
about that. I
before.
think she's talking about the odor of the
The
cleaner.
ventilation, like, I just know that me spraying a highly concentrated solution like that in the same room, it'd be 6 times that day. That's just, it's gonna be heavy fumes, and I just think, like, if we have asthma kids or kids whose lungs are irritated by something else that we aren't aware of. My other question is, can teachers have gloves so we don't have to touch the solutions all the time? To keep our hands from protected a little bit?
We'll have to look at that. The dilemma is coming up with those gloves. All right, so I'm gonna have to come up with 30 pairs if we change them out 6 times, 180 pairs of gloves per day. I know they're on back order. I can't get them. So I think maybe if we maybe instruct in how to use the paper towel without direct contact of the cleaner.
But I'm just wondering, can like teachers just have like their own like rubbers, like the dishwashing gloves, and then just
Oh, like dishwashing gloves?
yeah, just do that? Because I'd be the only one.
All right.
wearing them. But
Denise, you
anyway,
want to add dishwashing gloves? on
yeah.
that?
And I apologize if I'm talking too much. Sorry about that.
No, well, and I think the board understands this, but we want you to understand this, that it's so little cushion in terms of staff, all right? Let's make people, safe. Give you a sense of security.
I do
So.
know ventilation in those rooms is something that needs to be maybe explored further.
Okay, and maybe we need to look at a different cleaner if the smell of 19 is too strong.
Is that the cleaner that's recommended? Who's the cleaner, why did we go out with this cleaner?
We chose this cleaner because it's highly available and we use it everywhere.
Okay.
So it's something we have in our system rather than hunting down another cleaner. All right.
Yeah.
Some people have talked about what was it you, Lisa, the Dawn? Did we talk about Dawn dish soap and something else? Our problem with Dawn is that it does leave a residue. You have to understand if you ever seen somebody that washed their carpets and didn't get the soap extracted? Okay. So that's the problem we have when we start to use some of those cleaners. There is some residue.
Like a bleach solution has to be replaced every 24 hours. There's a whole big long list with the EPA approved cleaners, but most of them are gonna be similar to what we use. And as far as odor and
So Francis, we'll have to ask tomorrow if there's something they recommend due to the odor, the strong
a dish soap
cleaner
is
odor.
intended to be rinsed from the surface, it's not really intended to be cleaning surfaces. So I don't know how they would rinse that off, and then anytime there's a film on there, that kind of creates, a breeding ground.
I work at a chiropractor office, and we use a cleaning solution that has no odor at all. And I'm trying to think of what it is, so hopefully I'll
If you
come
can
up with
email
it.
that to me
Let us know.
Yeah.
tomorrow or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
we'll
wipes?
take a look at it.
Yeah, we can't get our hands on a lot of wipes right
Yeah,
now.
we would go through tons
Yeah.
of white.
I
Oh,
use
we
the
could
same
go
wipes
through
that they
tons of
use,
wipes, too.
similar wipes to what they use at the clinic. I
Yeah.
have that in my office, but that wouldn't be.
I can't remember the name of them, they're
Like
proposals.
$10 a ton.
So they are.
Uh-huh.
Wow. We're going through a lot right now.
Like Santa Claus.
Yes, Santa Claus, that's exactly what they are. Yeah, but,
They're really expensive.
Yeah, and we have those in our athletic department for
Unfortunately.
blood spills.
And
Yes.
that's
So.
why I use
and they don't
them.
provide much smell. That's why I was
They
thinking
don't.
that.
They're
They really, I mean, we use them in patients' rooms.
You're supposed to use them with gloves, like, that's, but we don't.
Right, I don't either.
So supposedly they're really strong. but-
Yeah,
So again, we would want to be mindful of that with our staff.
Right.
If we're supposed to use glove, even though we will get dishwashing glove. Don't want to wreck your nails.
No, it's, your hand,
I
I mean,
know.
if you're doing it all day, your hands are gonna
Skin.
burn. I don't think the teachers are against helping, we just wanna make sure that yours are pretty, yours are pretty.
Yeah.
I work with it every day and it doesn't seem to.
If it's
Yeah.
mixed correctly and not over concentrated,
We-
it's actually a very.
We have a
mild-
metering system, we have a machine
Yeah.
that meters out the chemicals, so the
Correct.
bottles will be metered out and filled for the teachers.
So that's, sanitation's a big part of what we're going to need to do. So questions you folks want me to investigate to have laid out better in our plan? I'll look at that sanitation or sanitizer, cleaner, not sanitizer. Okay, mask requirements. I know this is a big hot button political issue. It can't be a political issue here. So the governor's executive order requires students and staff members to wear masks. Progressive discipline will be applied for students and staff members. We'll start with education, obviously. Reminder, great example will be buses. Our buses will have extra masks on them, of disposable masks for students that forget their masks. So, doctor's notes may be required for all staff members requesting an exception from the mask. We can request that. We can also do that for our students too. If a student requests not to wear a mask or a staff member, they will be issued a face shield. Here's our face shields we ordered. We'll get some from the state also, but they will be required to wear that throughout the day. So, we need to preserve the safety of everyone. Authentication of that disability or condition could be sought if we already have it on file through Nurse Cassie. We will take care of it, but if not, we will probably need a doctor's note to authenticate that exception. Additional masks will be placed on the school bus. I said that. Parents are encouraged to begin teaching and modeling to their students on the proper wear of masks. If you, I have sworn off going into some big box stores now, simply because it makes my chest hurt, thinking about trying to bring our students back and keep people safe, and we have a little revolt there. So we have to have a policy on that. I don't know that I'll have the model policy ready for you on Monday night. I'm waiting for that from MSBA. So we will have a policy on that. Try and get something.
I have a question regarding the masks. Are we going to have something like a policy, included in that policy, like the types of masks they wear? And, you know, you have a bunch of different slogans on masks now and things.
Well, the slogans would be covered by our dress code policy.
Okay.
So just like a hat or a belt.
And I feel
belt
like the
buckle.
parents need to be aware of that as well.
Yep, this
You
is
know.
not a time to
Right.
make a statement.
We also have to do some education on masks that aren't effective, like the masks with the valves in them are not going to be good. I mean, we may
Yeah.
have to do a little bit of education there with the families about.
Agree.
Yeah, so the valve mask, most people don't understand that at all. The valve masks defeat the purpose of why cloth masks are effective. Valve masks protect you if it's the right type, but it doesn't protect anybody around you. What happens when you exhale through a valve mask, that valve opens and just lets you expire, and all the particles go out with your breath. So. And most of us can't afford the N95 masks that do have the other feature. So.
And I know you said you don't have the policy yet, but when it comes to the elementary, what are the age requirements? I think there's some guidance from the governor on that, maybe.
Correct, and that was everyone would wear them, okay, at this point. All students,
Even like kindergarten, first grade?
even kindergarten and up,
But not preschool.
but not preschool. And any student, not age, determines it, it's grade. So.
I have a question or a comment. We have been talking about masks, and you're supposed to wash your mask every day, and we figured probably our students wouldn't. I was kind of wondering, like, maybe at the end of the day, if I had a container, like I walk my students to the door, they take them off, put them in, I seal it up. We go to the fax room, dump them in the wash, I mean.
Yeah, okay, so they're recommending we do not do that, all right? Simply because when they're leaving your room, then they would be out without a mask, all right?
Well, I was gonna go to the outside door.
The exit door?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still not recommended because then we have to clean those masks to get them back to the rightful owner. Well, not necessarily rightful owner if they're all the same, but we have to handle that, increasing the greater risk for our custodian or whoever cleans it.
And I think Lisa.
And I know that we'll try and educate our parents as much as possible, but even though they're a little bit dirty, I still think they're going to function.
And if we were to see a student who had a very soiled mask, we obviously would provide them with one to exchange it out for. I mean, we will handle those situations appropriately.
Lisa, you have 3 masks, you're asking 3 masks per student on your supply list, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, and we're going to provide another mask for each student. We've ordered our own, and the state is providing us with some masks, but we need to keep a little bit of stock ourselves just for all the different things that could occur. So, Mrs. Hanson, you want to talk a little bit about hybrid and in-person? Just kind of hit the highlights here. We won't have all the details, but this gives you an opportunity to ask about the plans for BRE.
Let me just move this. Would you like me to use your points up there?
No,
Okay.
you can do whatever you want.
First
You
of
can take your mask off so you can be heard.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay? I'm fine with it on. Okay. So first of all, one of the things that we're looking at Burt Rainey is to have hybrid and in-person to anyone outside of our building look the same. So to parents or community members, it would look the same. Where it would vary would be things that staff and students would have to do in the building. Main point being that in both of those circumstances, because of space, we will be able to have all of our students in the building. We also are going to take the idea that for any of the protocols, whether it's social distancing or cleaning, that we are going to act like it's a hybrid model, knowing that during in-person model, there will be some flexibility, but just to get all of us, staff and students, used to social distancing, utilizing hallways appropriately, and really just working with our students on how to be socially distant from each other, how to wash hands. Some controlled movement that is noted up there. We have, throughout all of our hallways, we have heavy vinyl rainbow circles that once the hallways are done will be placed in the center of the hallways every 6 feet. They are not permanently attached, but they are actually the same company that we have used for our downstairs, our smart room that our kids have used. And even someone of my size, I can easily walk on them, jump on them, and they do not move. Not saying that they won't move or couldn't be kicked, because they could, but it will be something we'll use down the center of the hallways to give our students a visual for what that 6-foot rule is. We did a lot of the 6-foot rule during sting care, and what we always told our kids, and it may not have been exactly 6 feet, but in an effort to get them close, you know, we did the whole hands out. If you can touch each other, you're too close. The circles will also help support that as well. Also on the walls, we have red vinyl arrows that will be going up. And as you're moving through the hallways, we will always be moving on the right side. We will, we're also in the process of developing, I call it a traffic schedule. So in the elementary, if you have a second grader, typically what you see a child leaving the classroom for would be like music and phy-ed. So we have 2 classrooms. They would not be departing and going down the hallway at the same time. And actually, we're even looking at different routes to just eliminate the number of students that are crossing over in the hallway or going through the same space within a short amount of time. We are really focusing on students remaining in cohorts during the day. So things that will be different would be what we have used in the past would be like in math. We might have ability grouped in 5th grade. And so those math groups might change based on students' knowledge of a certain math topic. That will no longer happen. So if your child is in Mrs. Herneman's class, Mrs. Herneman will, and those students will stay in her class. The only exception to that is we will have a few departmentalizing situations where if Mrs. Herneman is going to be the 5th grade science teacher, she would go to the 3 5th grade rooms, but those students will not move from room to room. We will also not be, we will do our very best for those students not to cross or to cross over each other's footprints in any way. We know we can't make that never happen, but we're going to work really hard to keep them really separate. It kind of reminds me of probably when some of us were in elementary school and you had an elementary classroom teacher and you stayed with him or her for most of the day. That's really what our students are going to look like. Recess is definitely going to be held. We've had, as a staff, a number of meetings in the last month, and we've got a lot of priorities, but one of them being is recess and outdoor activities are going to be really important for our students. They are going to need to be able to get outside and utilize different areas, you know, around the school. Mrs. Gray, specifically like for phy-ed, we're developing new units or outdoor activities. You know, I teased her today that we could do downhill skiing. I haven't told Franny that yet, but, you know, on the hill. Obviously kidding, but, you know, we're looking at different physical activities that are more centered on not large team sports. So one of the guidelines, it does allow us, even in Phi-Ed, if we happen to be inside in the gym, Mrs. Gray is creating skills that students can do that would not be what you would typically see in an elementary gym, where you might have 25 kids running around playing, you know, Nemo tag or whatever it might be. So really are going to be emphasizing outdoor learning as much as possible. You know, our guidelines in the winter is typically 10 degrees below zero, and, you know, we, even if it's snow pants, you know, we're going to get the kids outside and get them active, because for a lot of our kids, sitting and remaining in spots in the classroom is going to be a lot different than what they've had before, so we need to give them a lot of outlets. One of the things too that I kind of skipped over was the reconfiguring of rooms. My staff have been coming in grade level groups, and we have started with pre-K through 5. And so, for example, I met with the first grade teachers or the 5th grade teachers, and really Cassie also assisted. We went into their classrooms with them. We have special tape that we use on the floors, and we really help them design their classroom. I'll be really honest, you know, it's eye-opening to all of us, the fact that there's a lot of things in those classrooms that can't be in there anymore. We just don't have space. So classrooms, for safety reasons, are going to represent more of maybe what we saw 15 years ago. Desks are going to be in rows. Desks are going to be 6 feet apart. Mr. Schneider was able to secure some storage units for us, and so some of those extra pieces of furniture will be put in storage, and elementary teachers will have access to that. So if Mrs. Jans needs to switch up her science materials, she'll be able to go out and get those from the storage. I will also say, along with that, even though it was eye-opening to see that, I already have noticed, I try, you know, a lot of the teachers are in working, getting classrooms set up. They are being very creative with our children's learning spots. And so don't think that you're just going to see an empty classroom with desks, because even today, a few of them that I was in, they're getting really creative, making it look similar to what we've tried to have in the past at Burt Rainey. Parents and families, we're going to be asking to screen students prior to arrival. And I don't know if you, Cassie, do you want her to talk about that right now, Rich, or maybe later? Okay.
No, she's got her own stuff.
And we're also, obviously, for distance learning, going 5 days a week. And we are, right now, we're working on issuing devices for all students, not just 4th and 5th, but kindergarten through 5th. And by doing that, that will allow our staff to set up a more structured schedule during the day, because we will be able to support those students getting online versus what I would consider more of what the paper packets activities that we did for the younger kids. So that was a quick overview, but questions?
About that? So when the teachers went through those classrooms, they took out the items that could not be sanitized, whatever it would be, you know, maybe it's a beanbag chair. Mm-hmm. Those things. It's pretty bare, those classrooms are. So just to make sure that we didn't have them either occupying floor space or sanitation-wise. Questions for Lisa?
One thing I'll say that's a really good example is, so if you've been in our kindergarten rooms in the last 5 years, kindergartners now are going to have desks. They're not going to be like high school desks. They're actually triangle-sized desks. That's going to be different for our younger kids. But again, the teachers are working really hard to kind of create that space for that child, you know, in a creative manner. So
It'll be different for the teachers again, too.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, you know, you think about reading time where they, you know, everybody just circled up. We're going to have to do things differently. All right?
If we get the hybrid, do we know what that looks like yet, or are we still kind of putting that one together?
The hybrid and the
Yeah.
in-person that's actually what I just talked about. They're going to be very much the same.
Okay.
The,
Well, I'm talking about how do we rotate the students in and out as far as, how do we break that up? If you're gonna have
No, the hybrid would be every day.
yes,
hybrids every day.
every day.
Yep, so for the characteristics of hybrid, it's 50% capacity. That's really the determining factor. So that's what it comes down to. We're afraid of a couple things. We have parents that would not be able to support or to schedule that. That's why our goal was to get everybody here every day.
I see what you're saying.
So,
But you're
and
just
that's
gonna spread
exactly
them
what
out.
Lakeview did.
Exactly. Yep.
So with hybrid, if you look at the guidelines for us, it's so, in person, we do our best to maintain 6 feet. In hybrid, you have to maintain 6 feet, like in seating. So say we had 22 kids in a classroom, and in person, and that can't quite fit 6 feet, but almost 6 feet, we can do it. In hybrid, you have to be able to fit that 6 feet distance. So that's when Lisa said that, I don't want to speak for her, but when she said that it'll look the same to the public, the changes come from within, of kind of how much we tightened up some of those restrictions and limit the footprint of the students.
And I think it's really important that our community and our families, as we go through this, know that regardless of either of those two, unless something drastic happens, at Burt Rainey, our intention is to have all of the kids here. Because I know already in visiting with parents, they're worried. You know, who's going to take care of my children? Where will they go when I'm at work? And it is definitely our goal to have them here unless something obviously changes with case numbers.
Yeah, I think I understand it now. Thank you.
Okay, yep.
Sorry. I just have kind of a crazy question, because one of the things that you see in the classroom setting is books, reading
Yes.
books.
Yep.
So is that no longer going to be in the classroom just because there's so much hands-on those books? And how do you sanitize a book?
We've got a couple different scenarios. First of all, there are guidelines coming from MDE, MDH, the American Library Association, CDC. They're all a little bit varied, but really what it comes down to is in classrooms, the typical classroom library. So like as a 4th grade teacher, I had a lot of books. That they will not look the same, but now what many of the teachers are going to do is once a week, Max would get a container of books that his teacher and maybe he have helped select for that week. They will remain with him in a tub for that week. And then come that Monday, the following week, one of our staff members would be able to help switch them out. And obviously they can do that during the week too, but you know, there might be 10 to 20. We're working on our library protocols. Actually, we have a library meeting tomorrow. But even some of the things like we'll still be able to use our library books, but when a child returns them, they're not just going to go back on the shelf. They would go through a sit time cleaning process.
Sure. Those are the sets.
So yeah, books will still be there, yes.
So, Rich, I listened to the MSBA webinar that they had last Friday, and they talked about this occupancy, and that is by state fire marshal
Yep.
standards, right? Is that how they determine
Correct,
that?
but it's not by classroom.
It's not by
It's
classroom.
building
By building.
occupancy.
Okay.
So we do not have to do it by classroom.
And we are already
We are
already below
well
that. Below that 50%
Yeah. We have a
occupancy.
pretty big footprint
Okay, so
here
that's,
for the number of students. we
so
have.
that's how we can go with every student there
Yep.
every day.
And you look at
Right.
Lakeview, who has less square footage than we do, and they were able to do the same thing with about the same number of students, a little bit less than us.
Okay, I have a question for you. So the last few years where I work, we've been doing a school supply fund drive. And then we distribute it to the area schools. What is it you could use?
Right now, we're really looking for pencil boxes, because our students are all going to have, that's on the supply list, but not everyone is able to obtain those because all of our kids will have at least two because there will be no more sharing of group crayon tubs, pencil
Okay.
boxes. I'll be honest, if you can get your hands on any kind of wipes, there are times that we would love to be able to utilize those.
Okay.
Cassie and Nicole, what else was on?
Gas.
Oh, yes, magnetic letters, that sounds really odd, but, and they don't have to be new sets, because we're gonna clean them all and they're gonna sit for a long period of time, but we're trying to make magnetic sets for all of our K-1 students, so they have their own.
Okay.
That takes a lot of letters, but you know, if you have half of a set at home, we'd take them, because we'll blend them with something else.
Okay.
One of the things with those, like this summer during our reading program, Mrs. Klaus and Mrs. Quam, you know, each of the kids involved in the reading program, they literally have their own chair, their own cookie sheet that holds the magnetic letters, and they never switch them. But our goal is to try and get enough magnetic letters for all of the kids in K-1. A lot of the teachers have them, and I haven't gotten a total count yet, but
I would say masks too.
yes.
Okay.
Masks and
Yep.
disposable masks. You know, disposable masks are becoming more available, and we are gonna go through a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that would.
Those are really our big
If you
pieces.
think of anything
Water
else, let me know.
bottles.
Okay,
And
sounds
water
good.
bottles.
Yes, that would be another good
Like
one.
reusable water bottles.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I have a
Thank you
small
for
stock of
asking.
them, but not enough to go around between both
And I have
buildings by any
two
means.
stain shirt, or two twin shirts too.
Perfect. We hope we get to go.
I hope you get to use them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Great suggestions, thank you.
Okay, so while I get this up, just as a reminder, the standard for the high school is different than the elementary. And that's founded in that high school students are more likely to transmit or to show symptoms of it than our elementary. And that's based upon what the CDC tells us. So that's why elementary in our current plan, or based upon our current numbers, elementary could be in person. And then the high school would have to be hybrid, middle school and high school. So again, our goal is to get students in here as frequently as possible, but especially focusing on our younger students. That's why our middle school, our goal is to get them here every day in the hybrid situation. All right, and so we'll have to use some of those large areas that you heard Robin and Ryan talk about in order to help spread out those students in hybrid. So as I get this going, Ryan?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. We have a lot of the same protocols in place as Lisa does in BRE. First off, in person, the average class size in a high school English class, math class would be about 25. The average classroom in the 1965 building to get students in at 6 feet is about 16 to 18 kids, and about 22 to 24 here in the 1965 building. So as in it, we do have a few larger classes. We have 2 classes that have more than 30 in. We would ask them to be into a large area, but otherwise, as far as in person, we would be using our normal classroom setting for our kids to come in. And that would be the same for our middle school and for our high school. The one big change for in-person that we would do is obviously controlled passing times. One thing we have looked at, traditionally we have 4-minute passing time where all 390 kids move around the building. We currently have 2 3-minute passing times where no more than half of the middle school and half of the high school will be moving around the building at one time. One way that we look at it, we will have some control around as far as which direction they go into. If you've ever been on our staircases are very narrow. So we are using, as far as like Lisa said with the hallways, the same things for the staircases. If you've ever seen our fax staircase, that is the main connector between the long hallway and the 30 building, you could see up to 300 kids shoulder to shoulder going through there in 4 minutes. So what we've done now is designated each one of our staircases as an up or a down. So it might take a little more to get into it, but once they get used to it, they should be able to access their rooms, within the 3-minute time frame. That also allows us to be able to get into a room, get out of a room as they transition in and out, and should allow cleaning time into it. That could adjust as we get into it a little more. But as far as right now, we do have our traditional class schedule in place. So we have our 47 minutes learning with everything involved and advisory into it. We looked at trying to do a self-contained model. It's virtually impossible with electives. So as we get into it with grouping in math and other types of classes, there's just no way that we could do that and to keep them into one area. When we get into hybrid, as Mr. Schneider said, our intent is to bring these 6th through 8th graders in every day. That's one thing that we've heard very clearly, that we want to see our kids every day. We have the space in our building to do it. We're sitting in one of the larger areas right now that can host up to 30 kids at 6 feet. The other areas that we have right now, the auditorium will be designated mainly for band and choir. Our band will be up on the stage area up there, spread out through 6 feet. The recommendation for choral is actually 10 feet. So to use the lower portion of the auditorium when needed would be during that time, would be on the bottom of the auditorium. That could also be used, as you know, through the capital outlay process. We got a generous donation and we purchased some out of capital outlay. There will be a large screen with projection that will be in there, so we can actually use the auditorium as an area. As Mrs. Osleeson talked about, some of the areas also too, the band choir areas can fit up to 25 kids into it, and the other large area we've designated right now is the library. So in there, by looking at our middle school teachers, right now we have 3 teachers that would be displaced most of the day, and then we have some that would be remain mostly in their room, but would have to transition out a little bit. We've talked about it with other schools. We look at it as kind of like a college professor moving in and out of rooms to do that, but we've tried to limit it based on area and space. We've gone through the majority of the rooms and designated how many potential desks we can get into that. We've met with over half of our staff. The rest of the staff will be in tomorrow. And we have looked at removing little areas that will go into storage, just as bookshelves, maybe extra desks, those types of things to get into there. Some other things that we've changed as well is our staff lounge area in our copy center will have to be moved out just to make sure that we have a safe learning space. Bathrooms will be a little more controlled. They'll be clearly marked with social distancing protocol. Some bathroom stalls and urinals will be closed up just to abide by 6 feet, so students will be able to use that, but also too, during the classroom day is we will have a Google Sheet that will be able to, the classrooms will be assigned, so Julie and Robin, as you know, are in the same area. Their students, if they need to, will be designated to the bathrooms right by their area, rather than potentially going over to the other side of the building. The majority of our stuff will be live, both in distance learning and in hybrid. We already had some families notify us that their students will be starting the year distance learning. So as we see it, one thing that we learned into that is we need more structure, we need more consistency, we need more accountability. So in there, as we plan on using these new laptops and or Chromebooks within the classroom, and then the teacher will be providing instruction live, whether we're in person or hybrid, to students who are at home. That same model will continue if we are forced to go into distance learning. If we go into hybrid at the high school, we're recommending an A-B schedule, which at that point would get our classroom sizes down to 12 to 13 on an average. That also gives us some flexibility into room. So if we have students who are struggling with hybrid or based on either special education or other needs, some of those kids would be able to be required to come every day. What would happen is we're having a lot of conversation right now. It doesn't matter if you're face-to-face or if you're at home, live instruction will still be happening. So we are making sure that all of our materials can be accessed in the classroom as well as at home at the same time. During distance learning, we had about 7 families that did not have reliable access, and I know Mr. Schneider, we're going to do a district-wide survey out. One thing we're going to do is if a student does not have reliable access, one thing we do have a large footprint. So those students can notify us, families can notify us. We will have what's called an internet cafe where the students will be designated to an area supervised by our study hall teacher, Christy Clausen, and then be able to provide live internet stream, reliable internet to them during the daytime. We talked about lunch, which is, there's a couple things that really drive a schedule. It's buses and lunch. Our lunch traditionally has been 36 minutes long. Now we will limit them to about a grade or a grade and a half in the middle school for 20 minutes. The sixth graders will be excited because they will continue on with recess. The seventh graders still remember recess, so we'll be going outside. We traditionally do that anyway right now, but we'll be asking them to follow the same recess guidelines as we can to go outside. Obviously, if inclement weather, one thing we do have is a beautiful auxiliary gym. We potentially could use that during that time through social distance and other thing. And then in there, we will switch and then bring in these other half of the seventh and eighth graders for lunch. High school gets a little more tricky. If we do recommend going out with closed lunch, and the thought process behind that is eliminating one less transition in and out of the building during the daytime. The issue that comes with it is we would have to look at 3 different lunches during the high school because there's about 226 high school kids. There's about 168 middle school kids, so space would be an issue. As of right now, we have proposed to spread out in the cafeteria as well as use the south half of Epsilon Gymnasium as a cafeteria area. So right now, traditionally at our lunchroom tables for a middle school, you can see about 12 kids on a table. We'll have to limit that down to 5. So tables will be an issue. We're very lucky that we have some from BRE that came over. We also just purchased some more that will be coming, but we will be organizing that to see how many lunches we can get in there and out. So the one thing about getting to the hybrid schedule is we still be very fortunate to get our kids on campus 3 days a week, especially at the high school level, and we would have some room to accommodate those who have special needs or special accommodations. The idea would be parents and families would screen students before coming to school, and then also with the backpacks, we are encouraging them to limit the amount of time. As if you've been in the building during the daytime or go back to our own high school days, the high school locker is a very social time. You get a lot of information and stuff in there, but we're trying to limit access to that to encourage the backpacks to come back. So as I said into it, distance learning would be 5 days a week. We would be following the normal class schedule. Like we said, consistency was very important. We've heard that from our stakeholders, that we would go on, but we would go live in there. We would recommend a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes of live instruction accompanied by some either individual time or some online resources and some things like that. Attendance will be taken each period. So that's kind of a brief overview. Another thing we have is we have designated the doors of access into the building. So based by locker space, we will ask the 9th and 12th graders to use door 16, which is down here by Mr. Petrick's room. Grades 10 and 11 will use what is the other access in there. It's called the yellow hallway, door 19. It would come right in between the cafeteria and the gymnasium. That gives them a straight ramp right up the gymnasium ramp there into the long hallway where all they are located at. And then all middle school and high school will be dropped off at the district door, door 5 by the boardroom. So that way the 6th graders can go straight and the 7th and 8th graders can go right upside. Each one of those doorways will be monitored by a para in the morning. At that time, we're working with Marlis to make sure that they have the option of being able to get grab-and-go breakfast at that time. They would walk right in, go right to their first hour class, and be ready for the day. So,
How does FIAD work if you're using the cafeteria for lunch? You just drop the curtain?
FIAD right now is, as Lisa had talked, we're going to try to get them out as much as possible. I know Lucas Dam, who is the new FIAD teacher, and Mr. Lallam have already been talking about different ideas. FIAD teachers in the area are talking about some of these requirements. We still would be able to have access to the football field as long as weather is good. The auxiliary gymnasium is big enough to host kids in there, so we would be able to space them out. We're still working through the guidelines of what exactly they can and can't do as far as what's going in during that time. So the other thing is, as you know, with the gracious donation of our video boards, those video boards are large projection boards. So we can hook up our phones, we can hook up our computers, and we could have Beachbody T25 with Sean T in the morning, and they would probably not walk the rest of the day. It might be the best workout they have. So there are different options in there for them to do that. So
I just have a question with the grades 9 through 12, the AB schedule. So you're not looking at having them in the school every day, or you are for 9 through 12?
No, we cannot accommodate in that. If we were to bring them in, we would have to use areas like the upper gym bleachers the south gym bleachers up there. We'd have to pull out the bottom gym bleachers. We could set a classroom up in the mezzanine area. We potentially could do the same thing in the auxiliary gym by dropping that and putting 2 different classrooms into it. Our backup right now, our 6th area is the junior high wrestling room, which is the old machine shop room. It's a large 45 by 45 square area that we can refinish and use and potentially hold a class of 30 in there. So in there, our areas would be very awkward. Like for an example, up on the stage up there, we could fit 25 into that. So, but it would look a lot like a college where they would have to be all over the place. So we thought with that going forward is probably the best option for high school. The nice thing is if we have kids that are falling behind, struggling, that we have the space to say, Ryan, we need your daughter or son to come in. We recommend this because of this, because they're not X, Y, and Z.
Or students that need, that have special, like an IEP. They might need greater supervision, so, or assistance. So they would likely be here every day.
But the AB schedule is like every other, right?
Correct. Yep.
And then,
Yep.
okay.
So within a 2-week period, they'd be in the building half the time.
And then the time they're not in the building, they'd be distant learning, checking in on the hour.
Yep, they would be doing their Google Classroom and Zoom from home, just as they would be sitting in the classroom. For those that don't have reliable internet access, we would try to notify that ahead of time. In our area, which I'm looking at the upper gym area here, we'd have tables, that type of stuff set up that they could come in and put the earbuds in and watch school all day, so.
Now, you had gotten some hotspots last spring. Do we still have those?
Yeah, I actually have that as a slide here, but
Okay.
I have 10, and they're just dormant right now. And so I'll up them
Okay.
for that possibility. I'm going to look at, Monday night, you'll see that in front of you too. I'm looking at 20 more. That's the smallest unit I can buy. It's 20 of them from Khajiit. And so we've done a little bit of research on that. Khajiit now has a unlimited plan. The Verizon plan that we currently have for those 10 are limited. And what they start to do is they throttle them back once you get to a certain point. There is some limit on it, but they think they can handle it. Khajiit's the #1 provider of this type of thing for schools. So I don't know if we'll go distance learning. Unfortunately, it's like masks. I had no idea back in June how many masks I'd need, but we went ahead and started ordering. The unfortunate thing with those Wi-Fi Khajiits is to get a decent price on them, they're about $636.16 a piece for a year. So times 20, that's real money. So about $12,000. So.
So when you talk about grades 9 through 12 going AB schedule, and then you mentioned that you foresee that being in person, like live instruction, is that how it doesn't interfere with those teachers that teach both middle school and high school? Because middle school students will be here all day, but high school students won't. Is that how that?
That's correct.
The
That's
elements
why we didn't
I-
choose, say,
Now
some
I'm
schools
in
are
a different
going
role
block
you're asking,
schedule.
but-
Some schools are going block schedule. Why we couldn't do that? We sat down and tried to figure out how do we go block schedule for our high school students, right? So they don't have to transition as much. We have too many shared middle school, high school staff. It's just not possible.
We've looked at,
So like one day they'll be getting it kind of ITV, not really ITV, but the concept of
Video
ITV
conferencing,
will be
yep.
one day, and then
Yep.
the next day would be in person.
Yep.
Virtual.
But that teacher is teaching.
yeah, so for an example, is Julie will be, based on a hybrid learning, will be in her room all day long. We'll be able to teach very naturally in a setting with a laptop or a Chromebook sitting right there. She can choose whether she wants it live or not. A lot of what they'll do is probably just do voiceover with their projection or whatever out there. Use any type of formative assessment, could be a number of different things that they used. Robin, on the other hand, potentially would have to, I'm sorry, Robin, would have to potentially be in the library for 5 of her 6 periods, but then when she teaches U.S. history, would be able to go down to her room because it's under the size to do that. So the nice thing is the teachers will be able to prep in the room and be able to do that as much as possible. So, but to be able to get them, the middle school in every day, we have to be able to move some things around, so.
And then I have a question, so, just because this has come up and I'm not confused. So in person, if we read scenario one, would I be in my classroom? And then hybrid, I'm in the library?
Correct.
Okay, and then
Yes.
also for both principals, some of the teachers are asking about if they can still hand out worksheets or papers to children. Is that still allowed, that we're allowed to hand out things to students?
Yes.
We just don't know what it is. We don't know if there's teachers.
I'll turn my mic
Sorry.
off. Rich took that very well.
Yeah.
Yes, we still have copiers, we still have
Yes.
paper, we
Maybe
still
we'll
have,
do color
You
too.
know how much
Everything-
we waste on copy machines
know,
every year?
I can't imagine.
yeah. The biggest thing we
Too
had
much.
talked about is
Yeah.
just making sure that we're able to be able to deliver both, and so we're not duplicating things into it, but, you know, some teachers have said, I want to be able to get an assessment by paper, can I do it? Yes, but be ready, because you know, you give an assessment that hour, paper that it's out there. We've talked about that as a staff, we really can't say anything's.
You know, we know there's a transition, but ultimately, I guess my vision, I say that I'm upset about the paper, but my vision is that keeping the feedback loop short. We learn the best when we get instant feedback, all right? That's why our kids are so dang good at these video games. They're getting instant feedback. That's my goal, is I want things electronic enough that they can get instant feedback. But it doesn't work in every situation.
And just to touch base, we would have the same library protocols and that. Many of our teachers have lots of classroom library books and that type of stuff, so we'll be developing all those too as well, so.
So when you're talking A-B schedule, what about Fridays?
We would put that designated out there, so week one would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, A schedule, and the next one would be B schedule.
Okay.
So Fridays, they would be here,
Okay.
so.
And so when will they get their schedules out so they know if they're, you know what I mean? Like the 10th through 12th graders, when will they have are their schedules out? I don't even know.
They are not out, they are ready. They're ready, it's just a matter of waiting to
Okay.
get everything solidified.
We do have like a little bit of hiccup in that. We don't have an industrial tech teacher yet.
Right.
So, but we do have a recommendation, so.
And then are you having like an online orientation for these kids when you were saying, one-way hallway, one-way steps? How are they going to get familiar with all
Yep.
of it? I mean, this is a lot for us to
Yeah.
understand. I
So we'll
can't imagine
finalize.
for children.
So we'll finalize that tomorrow when our leadership team and PLC team meet, but we're looking at doing potentially an open house over maybe 3 nights.
Okay.
And do it by grade levels. One thing we do know, we're still gonna try to do our 6th grade boot camp. We think that's very important. As they transition in, we will follow the same groupings as the community ed will do, but also too, in our open houses, we need to give computers out, we need to give masks out, we need stuff like that. But trying to limit the access and times to be very controlled when they come in. Our middle school, we know, will probably 7, 8, early 9th grade are probably the largest populations, as well as 6th graders that come those nights. 10th graders on above, they come in quick, okay, I gotta go see ya, I just wanna see friends, basically, but we're trying to do it very controlled, so we're bouncing ideas off on a region to see what would maybe be the best for us. There will be, once we finalize out there, I'm gonna do a Zoom with the middle school and the high school to talk about some of these things and present in there, and then some of that too will be, we've talked about it as staff, we had a staff meeting last week. Our first couple days is going to be very intentional about safety, about exactly how we use technology, about how we log in, and all that stuff's going to be all preloaded, because we don't know if week 2 we're going to be here. So the amount of time that we have, we need to be very specific with that. But yes, the videos and other things will come out about the ups and the downs and how we move around the building and some things like that, so.
So teachers back there, both of you are high school teachers. Are either of you on the leadership team? You are. So to me, I always talked about we have to get down to the soldiers level. You folks tomorrow, your mission is to think about what's that look like for the kid and think about all those details. All right? And that will help. That's so valuable because, you look at him, he's down here, but you guys are right in the trenches. So really important. Other questions for Mr. Luh?
I have one, but I'm not quite sure how to word it. So part of this MSBA MSBA webinar that I listened to, they talked about the difference between elementary and secondary schools, because that's part of the Minnesota statute. And their recommendations for learning have divided those different sections or classes. Yet, we have a middle school that's with the high school. So that's really not, we really don't have to worry about that.
So the threshold is a secondary threshold, which
Yeah.
includes the middle school and the high school.
Okay,
So.
so we don't need
elementary
to worry
is
about
one,
that.
And, yep, the middle school, high school, because they're together. You know, if we'd have had a K-6 format over there with BRE, that would be the elementary. And this would be the secondary, but that's all secondary.
Okay, because they said elementary was defined as K through 6.
Correct.
Secondary
Yep.
is 7 through 12.
But,
But-
and they also said, remember, it's by configuration of your building.
Okay. That's why I was thinking it didn't really pertain. My other just comment is, was it difficult to recommend backpacks?
No. Point number 3 is the one I'm dreading up there. That's a no. The backpacks will
Oh,
be,
the no
they'll
lunch.
be fine.
Close
The no lunch.
The lunch thing will be, it is, and we all know that into it, and
Good.
and in the whole thing, but, you know, it's in there too, it's like anything, I think just as the same with the Minnesota State High School announcements, and Tim will update this on Monday, is at least we still have sports, it's just gonna look differently. Right now, in here, we can still have school, you know,
Yeah.
just down watching the basketball, the volleyball, watching the football team run today, it's fall. It's time to get the kids back in. The camaraderie, it will be interesting to see as we progress, if we do have to go more hybrid, what our high school kids do. One A, B, they might opt to more in, and they might have to say, you know what, I'm okay with this, I can just do this full-time at home. And to see, because I see Mr. Luff sitting in his jammies every day taking class, I can do that too. But in talking to high school, I was lucky enough to bounce this off some of the community ed workers this summer. The number one thing is homecoming, powder puff football, and FFA. The FFA bonfire on Thursday night, which is, they've been sitting in these seats for 6 years waiting for their turn to do that, and those are the things that we will have to look at and to go through, and that was the first thing they said out there are some of those things. And those are the things that we'll work through based on the guidelines to do that, so.
I do think, like, I also have been getting a lot more communication from families of our older high school, so our 11th and 12th graders, requesting to do full-time PSEO as well. Because if they're gonna be distance learning anyway, why not be doing college credit and getting it that way? So I am seeing, and I think Ryan's probably obviously seeing the same thing. So that also could affect some of my members as well.
I had a question about the distance learning. I know that Mr. Wells and I have talked about this, but if the students, or if the parents request distance learning as a district, is there going to be, like, if you say you're going to distance learn, that goes to midterm, or that goes to quarter, or are they able to balance?
We were
it
just
out?
talking about that, okay. So, I don't know, did anybody listen to Lakeview? They said that's what they're doing. I was given information that we can't do that. We will probably recommend that.
Told similar.
Yeah. We can recommend them to make that at that point, but we cannot hold them. It is,
A parent can unfortunately choose and they can flux in and out. I think it was even talked about at our MSEA thing. So,
I knew that was not, so I had it.
I wish I had a better answer for you than that. Okay, transportation. Rory wasn't able to be here tonight, but obviously students and drivers will all have masks on. Sanitation of the buses, vans, and cars before any new groups of students enter the bus. For example, our buses are used for Clarkfield Charter School, so we had a meeting this morning about that. We'll drop off at Clarkfield Charter School very early, 7:30. I think they're going to get dropped off there. Then what they're going to do is they're going to start a bus route to bring in a group of students, and this is in person too. We're probably going to see if we can handle it with hybrid the same way, but bring in a group of students, drop off at 7:40. Those buses are going to turn around and go back out on a very short route or shorter route. Like, for example, they might start over by Clarkfield, bring in a bus load, drop off, and then go get the west side of Granite Falls and come in. So I told him the latest I want students here is 8:15, all right? So we're going to have to feed those students after that point. There are some inconveniences, all right? This is one of them. So school drop-off areas, we'll talk about that. Lisa and I are still working on that. We hope to have that kind of formalized for Monday night. Ryan talked about his drop-off areas. I don't see those changing. Parent transportation is strongly, strongly encouraged. We need as many parents as possible to transport their own kiddos, all right? Otherwise, that really puts a big damper on our bus transportation. Questions about transportation?
If we have buses dropping off at 7:40, and parents may have to be to work at 8 a.m., we're going to have staff here anyways, can they not drop off before
We're going
then?
to try and avoid that. The problem is the exception will be the standard. So can I say absolutely no? I don't know. Still working on that. I mean, there's got to be some sacrifices on one end or the other. So, yes, ma'am.
Once they get there here, where are they gonna go? Is middle school,
Classrooms.
high school? Okay.
Right away. They have to go to classrooms because we don't want them congregating out by their lockers. So, and I know that's new for staff members, but we're also going to bring in our paraprofessionals earlier this year. So we're going to have, I got a slide called additional expenses. That'll be one of our additional expenses. Questions about transportation? Nursing and health. So just, I'll hit the high points and you can ask Cassie any particulars about this, but screening staff members will record their results on a daily basis in a Google form. Students, the parents and families will monitor, but we're not going to keep a record of it. Please understand that close physical contact, so if you know anybody that has had to do contact tracing, close physical contact within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. So that's what we're trying to keep track of. If we can keep track of all of this, find out when the symptoms occur, we have a better chance of controlling any possible outbreak. So we want to do as much work on the front side of that as possible. We are going to ask parents and staff, I think they'll be good about it, but we need those symptoms or any problems reported to us immediately so we can resolve and decide, is that COVID symptoms and for how long? I am not going to quote days and time because right now it is complicated on how long you're going to be quarantined or how long after a fever. Plus they have an MDH webinar tomorrow morning and we're expecting a big change tomorrow morning. So at least that's what everything's indicated to me. So we're going to do things like teach and reinforce proper hand washing. Signage will be located throughout the building, including things such as symptoms, hand washing, etc. Those will be located throughout our building. That's all part of the requirement of this safe learning plan. Information will be about the symptoms will be shared with families. We need them to be on the front lines with us in helping it. Part of this is going to be us collecting information so we start to get an idea of how many students we're going to have in our building. So a survey will go out to our parents to ask them to commit to in-person hybrid or distance learning so we know, so we have those numbers in front of us. There'll be other parts of that survey too, but all right. Questions about nursing and health?
Proper use of the mask to cover the nose, will that be also mentioned?
Yes. I think I said that the last board member. Remember, I'm a military guy. We wear things correctly. All right?
Yep.
There will be a lot of education for staff and students as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
For use of masks and
Okay.
And it's not to say that at times in a classroom, we're not going to have to make some exceptions, but we got to give them the tools to do it safely.
May I back up to busing? Will that same staggered schedule happen at the end of the day as well?
Yes, it will. Yeah.
Will we have kids staying beyond the bell or leaving a little early?
Beyond the bell at this point. I think that's what Lisa preferred.
Yeah, and we have 3 dismissal here, so they'll be staggered as they walk out to get out, so.
So, and that's made Clarkfield Charter School kind of a challenge for them too, because a bus won't get over there till 3:45 probably. Questions about nursing and health? Food service. So the meals will be served at BRE as a grab-and-go breakfast. And then to start the year, our elementary students are not going to be very happy with their lunch, but they're going to get a sack lunch to start the year. Eventually, we'll work towards a hot lunch for those kiddos, but we're taking it to them so that we can commit more to the middle school and high school over here.
Are they still able to bring their lunch from home?
Absolutely. Yep. No. Middle school, high school will be a grab-and-go breakfast. Ryan talked about possibly having those 3 entry points, and they can grab their breakfast at that point. Hot lunch will be in person with spacing. They will eat in cohorts, which is basically their lunches. We're still working out. I don't think most middle school kids will be happy with it, but I'd like to assign tables. That's how I think. That way I can limit, remember that close physical contact, I can control who they're around, and then I know who to follow up on to do contact tracing for. No second chance breakfasts. We used to sell things out in the hallway. That's just not a possibility. Tables will be clean, sanitized between groups. Big thing, I know it was when I was asked to make some shifts down at Blue Earth area, closed campus for high school students. That's never popular. But it's something we have to do to get all of our kiddos in this building. I think that's a sacrifice we need to make. No self-serve options during lunch hour. It will all be served to them. Meals will no longer be free. So up till now, we have gotten a waiver so that our meals were free to all students. That expires before school starts, so we'll need free and reduced or educational benefits applications from each family, just like in the past. So that's going to be hard for some parents to get used to start paying for lunch again, but they'll have to. One thing to keep in mind, some of the food that we want to serve is in short supply. When sometimes when the student complains about that cold meat sandwich, it's really the best we can get. It's not that we're not trying to be creative. Marlis takes great pride in trying to offer a great meal to all of our students, but sacks, paper sacks are hard to come by now. She couldn't get them at the beginning of the summer, and so unfortunately she had to start using plastic sacks. Just hard to come by. Meals for families electing distance learning will be made available for pickup, not delivery. We cannot deliver those. We just don't have the resources to deliver. Couple operational considerations. Visitors and vendors. Obviously, we need to let our vendors in at certain times of the day. Great example is if we need to do some HVAC repair. That's a vendor. They'll need to come in. Our deliveries for things such as UPS and Postal Service, those will continue in the fashion they have been, contactless. So we will have staggered use of communal spaces. We don't want the elementary crossing paths with our middle school. So we need to keep that good separation. We will have a system for communicating changes to the scenarios, whether it be to going to distance learning. I have a communications slide here in a bit. But expect those could be very rapid, just like a snow day. That's how quickly they could occur. And what could be the trigger is a staff or a classroom, multiple positive cases. We would have to react quickly. Just because a class or a classroom has positive cases in it doesn't mean the whole school is going to have to close down. That will be kind of under the direction of the Department of Health. They'll tell us what we need to do at a minimum. PPE, the state did come through and provide us with several things. There's just kind of a brief idea of what we have on hand. She ordered some more masks today, so that's probably not accurate at this point, but that gives you an idea. We ordered face shields for staff members in case they wanted to teach in that. That does not remove the mask requirement, but we do have some see-through masks, a very limited supply. The reason they're limited is because they're very expensive. What are they, $7 a piece?
At least, I think it's like $70 for a, what is it, 25 pack?
Yeah.
I can't do that. But they are very expensive, and we really don't know till they come,
How good they are?
how good they're going to be, how durable they're gonna be, how many times you can reuse them. You know, a face shield can only be reused so many times before it starts falling apart. I don't know if these masks are gonna be similar.
So and I have N95 masks, but we're not going to use those. That's not our intent. If it gets to that point, we shouldn't be here. We need N95 masks. So we bought some portable hand sanitizer stations, bought several non-contact thermometers. Staff members can do it at home, or they can, we'll have stations for them to check their temperature and report their information in each building.
There is gonna be some items that I'm going to have to work on acquiring after looking at the direct service guidance.
When she says direct service, that would be like IEP students.
Like one-to-one, maybe say a student that can't understand the boundaries of social distancing, or someone that maybe.
Or diapering.
Someone that has to be toileted, or,
Yeah.
you know, things like that. We've gotten some guidance about the type of PPE we have to use, and isolation gowns is huge in there. That also applies to in some of our cleaning, in a case of a positive or in our isolation space. So those are, I'm trying to get my hands on those right now, but they're very limited. So we're kind of being creative as a nursing body in Minnesota of like what types of things can we use for isolation gowns? You know, can we use disposable lab coats? Can we use ponchos? Can we use, I mean, medical gown, like hospital gowns, can we use? They're not ideal. You know, that's one big challenge we're having right now, because we weren't really expecting some of that in that guidance. So that's one thing that's gonna be added on here.
Now, Rich, did you say the staff, they will take their own temperature when they enter the door and
They can do it either at home, or we'll have stations for them to do it here.
are all the temperatures reported then?
Yes,
Do
they'll
they
be
keep track and write it down and
they-
everything and?
in that Google form. So
Okay.
we've had that Google form going
Right.
since March.
For a while,
So.
okay.
One thing, I didn't put up on there is teachers will get a saliva test for COVID. They'll get one to be used at their discretion throughout. So I just had to submit the survey. I think she ran the numbers for me today, so.
I saw that, I just wasn't sure if they've given us a timeline. I have secret hopes that maybe.
Well, if you read what they said, we shouldn't count on it because they're saying the weekend of Labor Day. So I don't think, I'm thinking they're under promising and are gonna over deliver, so. Educational options. Let's be clear, parents can choose distance learning. I have in the past talked about parents are asked to notify the school if they intend to use distance learning by August 17th. We're going to get this survey out to them shortly, but probably not till after the board meeting, and you folks kind of weigh in that this sounds like a good plan. It looks like you've thought through things. And anything we haven't, I'm hoping you get to me so we have it ready for Monday night. Okay? A couple things we'll need to know for the future is so we can finish planning for our child care. How many students would that be? And child care would only be provided to Tier 1 employees. Keeping in mind, those are the Tier 1 employees. We can continue to charge for early childhood programs. So our preschool program that we charge for, we can continue to charge for. Last year, we were not allowed to charge for that. We will continue this year, though. District Advisory Council. So also, you'll hear it also referred to as an incident command team. So what I'll do is I'll assemble a group. I would like a couple board members, but it can't be a quorum, otherwise we might as well just have a board meeting. And then some staff members, representatives from our local bargaining units, students, and then some family representatives to look at what we're going to do. That does not have to be done by Monday night. That will be the information we're looking at Monday night will help us establish our baseline. This group will help us determine what our baseline is. Few staffing considerations. So we're going to have some additional expenses as they relate to staff. Time for our paraprofessionals, which include before and after school. Additional paraprofessionals, we are likely going to need additional paraprofessionals. We could, and it may come down to we maybe weren't going to need a paraprofessional and we'll continue it. We know we have some turnover. We're having a hard time getting applicants for our paraprofessionals. Right now, we're going to fill one full-time custodial position, and we're going to look for part-timers too to help us as we need it. When we start figuring out a rhythm for this, we might have to bring in some substitute custodial, but not as a full-time position, but as part-time or substitutes, which will really not be substitutes. They'll be additional. We are looking at additional substitutes for teachers, and we have some of our paraprofessionals that have four-year license or four-year degrees. I put licenses, should be degrees. What will incentivize them is if we pay for their short-term substitute license, then when we need them to substitute, they would not be a paraprofessional that day, but instead step into the classroom as a teacher. So that's our plan. So we would pay for that. I looked it up today, but it's escaping me how much that would cost us. And then we would pay them when they step in as a substitute teacher. We would have to pay them our substitute rate. And I'll put it in front of you Monday night, but I would recommend we pay them at $130 a day, simply because we cannot get people to do it. Distance learning coordinator, which we kind of approved if we can get a reasonable replacement for that. And we will look at continue with that position. I've offered that to Stacy Hins. Gives you an idea of still our unfilled positions. Questions about staffing? Concerns about staffing? Technology, we know that students in grades 4 through 12 will be 1-to-1. Lisa talked about how we're working at getting devices for our K through 3 for the possibility of distance learning for them. That will involve signing of acceptable use policies and device insurance. Currently that's set at $40 per year for that insurance. We would want to consider whether we want to make that consistent K through 5 so that it looks just like 6 through 12. We have several new devices, so we're pretty confident we'll have enough to cover all of that. We've already talked about the Wi-Fi and internet connectivity. We can give them school Wi-Fi if they're in distance learning through the internet cafe. Questions about technology? All of our staff have new devices. What do you guys think of your new devices?
So, getting smarter. We're not real great friends.
It's like any new friendship, takes time.
They all had Macs, and now I gave them PCs. So that's, and they're afraid to say that in front of me. So we're building dendrites,
Me too, it's tough.
but I saved a lot of money.
We like that.
Rich, go back to Wi-Fi devices. You talked about sending out a survey yet, but do you think that 30 devices is enough to cover the need, or is there more need than that?
I think we're going to have to prioritize. So there may be need that we can do workarounds for. For example, let's take a look at the Khajiits. They'll be great examples. We can put more than one device on one Khajiit in the family.
Okay.
So if you have 3 kiddos, they can all get on that Khajiit. I'm not saying it's going to be super fast at that, but you could all get on it. His internet cafe, that's why we're looking at it. We're also trying to figure out if we can get a way to start shooting our Wi-Fi out into the periphery of our buildings for a multitude of reasons. Some of it could be outdoor learning, so they can take their devices outside too.
Okay.
I have a question on the Khajiits. Is that something that we are able to program so just our devices run off them?
Correct. Yep, and that's how those other 10 work too. They have to, and we link it. We do have Go Guardian. Khajiit's even better than Go Guardian. They'll have Go Guardian on it. Go Guardian is, I don't know, how do I explain that?
It's an online monitoring system.
So they can see everywhere the student has been, what they're doing. They're messing around. So, all right, that's even at home.
Hey, Rich, can we back up to staffing once? I got a quick question on that.
Yep.
So I also listened to MSBA, and just curious with using paras, I mean, are we talking short-term timing, hopefully? Because I know it says they can't grade and they can't develop.
Correct.
And I'm
They
not
can
sure I'm asking that the
monitor,
right way.
They can't provide instruction.
Okay.
Yep.
So say a teacher goes out for 2 weeks. Are we expecting them to do the stuff from home with the para, or are we planning to use the para till we get somebody else in that role, or how does that work out?
Okay, so we're talking 2 different things. If I have a short-term substitute,
Correct.
they could do everything.
Correct.
If they're just a paraprofessional monitoring,
Sure.
we're going to have to be flexible enough. So just to use an example, if I were to have symptoms and cannot be in the classroom, and Ryan can't get me a substitute, I'm going to teach from home, and we're going to put a paraprofessional in that classroom to supervise.
Yep.
That's the best we can do.
Yep.
I can't guarantee you, we're going to try and get substitutes, but looking at our pool of substitutes, many of them fit in the 65-plus category.
Can we require our certified staff to work
I had one staff member say that if I come down with symptoms, but I don't have any symptoms, I have tested, and they said I would prefer to work from home than to do that, but then we got into the conversation, what if I have the severe symptoms, then what do we do? Then we will meet by department. We have lots of options at the high school level that we can at least patchwork some things together for a week or so to make sure learning still occurs, but that would require some type of adult for in there to do that.
I'm just thinking,
So,
if you have to stay home a lot of times, that also means that then your family has to stay home, or your children may have to stay home, and that could pose a problem for them still having to maintain your full workload at home. And distance or your children while they're at home. Presenting possible issues.
We're gonna be strong.
You're gonna get some kickback.
We'll make it through.
I'm not able to work, you know, or if I'm,
I mean, I've said it all along, yeah.
I'm quarantining, but I feel okay. Feel okay.
Yep. I think that's what Ryan's saying. That's two different things. So.
So if I have to stay home or if I'm being tested, then my household contacts also have to stay home, which then would mean I have to distance from my children. Now, I've expressed that, like, if I'm not on my deathbed, I'm obviously gonna be working because there's no other option. I'm just thinking from a certified standpoint, that could cause
it will look different.
issues.
Does that help?
That was the hardest part of that webinar to follow, was going through some of
Well,
that
and
guidance.
I think they're not telling us because nobody really knows.
Right. I've
You know,
listened to
it's
it
the
4
whole
times
family
and I'm
medical
still-
leave
Yeah.
and ADA and stuff, and there is so much misunderstanding because the last 3 words or 4 words are to the extent
Yep.
possible.
Yep.
That's a gray area.
I'm just thinking, could a staff member say, I'm being forced to be on leave, I'm not going to do this?
I think we can assume that we would work with them.
I just don't know if
I have a question to follow up on that, and this might be a private conversation, but a lot of the staff have been asking how, like if they're required to quarantine, if that means they're charged sick days. I'm talking quarantine, not sick. Like if they end up becoming sick from COVID and then have, like, we're.
Well, if they can teach remotely, definitely not any leave. The other one, I'll have to dig in deep to figure out.
I've had questions like that too, and I've
Yeah,
just said.
and
"Don't type."
unfortunately, I think Tara would tell you the same thing. If she was sitting here, we've read it all, it's not clear.
So I have another question. The CARES Act is supposed to taper off the end of September. And in the CARES Act, there were 10 days given to teachers with any maybe quarantine.
80 hours, yes?
80 hours, sorry. So if that tapers off, do those days then just disappear? Or are we waiting for another action?
Again, I'm hoping what I said here, if you're not sick and can teach remotely, I would not charge you leave.
I just didn't know if that was going to end when the CARES Act ends.
I think that's something we have to do to incentivize people. You know, I'm going to need doctor's notes, you know, and I think we've talked about that already. Great question.
Thank you.
Communication, we'll use our same, and I didn't get the slide down because I had a couple webinars today, so I say that in sarcasm. That's my whole day, is webinars. So, school messenger message will go out, email to families and students. We'll use social media posting. You know, I'm not good behind a camera or in front of a camera, so I probably won't do what Chris Fensky did, but I probably will make a public announcement next week sometime and kind of lay out our plan. Bunch of resources there. I'll put that on here. I have those all with me too. So questions, comments, things I didn't think about. How do we make this work?
I have another question that's about quarantine. I think that's a question. So if we've been exposed, is it the district's discretion
Okay.
How does that work?
The exposure will be told to us by MDH. So, yeah.
However, if you indicate to us that you've been exposed elsewhere, we also factor that in.
Yep. So we'll just need documentation. We'll be
I
able to
just
go.
didn't know how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, we, as a district, will let you know if, per our guidelines given to us by MDH, you have to basically. But if the exposure would happen outside of school, we ask that you know that, so that right away, we may not hear from MDH for quite some time with, the extended lead time on testing and things like that, so that's when you notify the district.
I had a question about like the construction classes and things like that that happen off campus. Do we know if those are happening or if those aren't?
Well, part of it's based upon us hiring industrial technology teacher. We believe we have somebody that can do that. And so once we hire that, our intent is even, I think what you and I talked about today was even if they're in hybrid, they could still go to their OJT type classes.
Okay.
So it will be changed. Obviously, the candidate pool we have, no one has a construction contractor license, as Mr. Walsh did. So as we were going out into the community, we were taking bids and looking at projects and those things. We no longer can do that. We have been very fortunate to reach out with Midwest. So we will be able to provide it would be kind of like through MRVCT, a college level intro to construction trades class. And then on there, they will be able to go out for 2 hours and work with either at Woodworks. We've talked with Rob Sneller and his team down there. They were willing to take some. And then we have a couple other local contractors that are willing to take kids on there for their 2 hour period to be able to still get that experience. So far it's been a win-win. It's been interesting to put in, but we have good partners. So that really helps and great people in our community to look at. We are looking at reaching out to other entities like Friendship Homes, American Surplus, or Ice Castle, those things. They're all looking for people to help out.
So if we had kids that are signed up for that, because that is the first 2 hours of the day.
Well, now since it changed, it's a little different.
Okay.
So, for an example, someone you might know, Amanda, is in the middle of the day.
Okay.
So they potentially will have 2 hours of construction trade and lunch. So they will have a little bit of extended time. Students then can go out to the job site, and in that period of time, we'll have lunch and in there. But we will work with them through OJT and say, these students will be here at this time. So as we went out and talked to our contractors, if they're going in, especially in the fall time, which is in the contracting world, money-making time, especially outdoors, if they know they're doing a shingling project in the first couple hours a day, they can get this done. But then if they have 2 or 3 kids showing up at this time, okay, now that's time that we really get on the roof and start pounding that shingling out, because I know I have 90 minutes or a little more with kids there to help them to do that. So,
What if we have kids that choose to do distant learning and we have kids that are in that construction class?
as they would still be able to get the college credit, we would have to determine, you're talking full distance learning, or they choose to go into distance
They
learning?
choose to do distant.
If they choose to go into distance learning, I would say at this time they could still choose to go to the job site because it's their choice to do that. If we're in full distance learning, then obviously all OJT will not happen. One thing I know that Lisa and I talked about, we have a lot of great high school kids that give up a study hall or an extra period to go over to BRE and be a classroom assistant. Unfortunately, this year we can't do that. So, but we are going to be offering that same thing to middle school. So we'll still be able to have our high school kids that want to give back to gain the experience and want to help to be able to give assistance within the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade area in there as well. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Other questions?
I have a question about switching between models. I know we talked about it on the MSBA web meeting, but and it probably falls under communication, but as we're having to maybe adjust between the models, how do you see the length of time that happens playing out?
Well, that's one of the questions that I have for tomorrow morning for public health. I think my vision is if we have an outbreak in Mrs. Hanson's 3rd grade class, I might have to say the night of that Mrs. Hanson's third grade class will not come to school, but the rest of the school can. So it's unfortunate, but we may have to be that reactive. If we're actually looking, so that's a close physical contact where somebody is positive. That's really when we're going to have to make that. If it's this trending data that we're looking at from the Department of Health, I think we're going to have plenty of lead time on that, like 4 or 5 days.
Week to week type thing?
Yeah. Because I will all the time be trying to watch it and graph it and see what's it really doing here. And is it the demographic I need to worry about? Because if it happens in Canby,
A lot of people travel back and forth.
just one.
We have to quarantine one.
Great question. All right. Any other questions? Everybody knows my email, so please get me things. If we need to stand up an FAQ, we can do that. So otherwise, we will see everyone at Monday night's board meeting. All right.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.